Hi everyone, welcome to another Hatton's Model Railways live stream, and today I'm going to give you some real modelling inspiration if you're a fan of narrow gauge railways, or you've taken a look at narrow gauge railways and have thought, that's something I might consider, but I really need to know more. And I'm going to look at what I've got to be honest is one of my favourite narrow gauge railways in the British Isles, the Lynton and Barnstaple Railway. It's completely different to pretty much any other preserved and narrow gauge railway that's still in operation in the British Isles. There's so many differences to all the other lines out there, and I'll be covering some of those throughout the stream. So join me for a quick history of the railway and its rebirth in the 21st century, and we'll take a comprehensive look at the sheer amount of models that are available for you to get started with a model of this fascinating railway. If you've got any questions regarding any of the items that are shown here today, please put them down in the chat and I'll answer them throughout the stream. So let's get started, and we'll take it really back to the basics. The Lynton and Barnstaple Railway was commissioned in 1896 to run from a town called Barnstaple in the southwest of England along the side of the Exmoor National Park to a coastal town of Lynmouth. It actually terminated in a place called Lynton, hence the Lynton and Barnstaple Railway, but that was connected to Lynmouth by a cliff lift. So this was a 19-mile railway built to just under 2-foot gauge, but it had more in common with the mainline railways of the time, of the standard gauge, than it actually did with the smaller narrow gauge railways that were still running. First of all, as you can see, the coaches were huge. They were far bigger than pretty much everything that was in operation in the UK on narrow gauge systems at the time, at over nearly 40 feet long, shall I say. And the locomotives themselves, again, for the 2-foot gauge railway that ran, were really big, so they really did stand out, but at the same time, they needed to be. You think of the south of England as quite flat in some places, but actually, the Woody Bay station along the route was the highest in southern England, and the railway started in Barnstaple at sea level. So you've already got a quite rigorous route with locomotives built for it and able to handle those steep gradients. So we're coming on now. We've got a great idea. We've got a great railway being constructed, opened in 1898, initially planned to have 3 locomotives that were built by Manning Wardle, which were named Yeo, Exe and Tor after local rivers, delivered in the original Holly Green that we see here. However, they found out that a 4th locomotive would be required to keep up the traffic levels, and unfortunately they weren't able to order another from Manning Wardle. So here's where we take another turn. It's actually one of the first American-built locomotives, certainly in narrow gauge, to work in the UK. This was a Baldwin design imported to the UK in 1898 to run alongside the original 3 Manning Wardle locomotives. And these 4 continued on their duties throughout the 1910s and 1900s with short rakes such as this, taking tourists and local passengers alongside the Exmoor National Park. But here's where we take even another twist. It's one of the few narrow gauge railways that was actually involved in the grouping as well of the big 4 railway companies in 1923. There was a number of Great Western railways that came into this, such as the Welsh Pool and Llanfair and the Vale of Rheidol as well. But these were more smaller operations, whereas this was a full railway network in itself. There were even extensions planned along the north coast of Somerset to Minehead. Unfortunately, these didn't take place. But there was a lot of investment carried out into the railway in the mid-1920s. A further locomotive was built, number 188, Lou, which was a modified version of the original designs. But the line struggled to make money during the 1920s and 1930s, and it was finally closed in 1935. With it being such an iconic system, it immediately captured the hearts of a lot of enthusiasts, even back in the 1930s. And over several years, parts of the route were preserved and made sure that they weren't built on. So some of the structures still survive today. And indeed, preservation societies have reopened part of the line from Woody Bay up at the north end of the line. And they've had a mile of track there that's been open and running since 2004. Initially, with some imported engines from other railways, by now they have rebuilt a replica of one of the original locomotives, the Baldwin that we mentioned previously. And you can see here in the second version of 762, Lynn, is now operating back on the Lynton and Barnstaple Railway with some of the original coaches that we can see behind it. A further replica was commissioned by the Festiniog Railway, and this is a replica of the 1925 built Manning Wardle Lou. So this was named numbered 190 and named Lyd. Again, a three-lettered river based in the south of England, keeping up the tradition of the other locomotives. So the railway's slowly but surely coming back together today. Some of the coaches have been restored, working alongside replicas of the original locomotives, and it is still possible to take a trip on the Lynton and Barnstaple Railway more than 120 years after its original opening. But let's have a look at the models, because as you can see here, we've got a full selection. It really is possible to model the whole of the Lynton and Barnstaple Railway, whether you're covering the original livery of the company from 1898 onwards. If you're looking at the Southern Railway era, which I'll show for you here, in the 1920s, where you've got the later livery on the Southern style colour scheme, as you can see with the Monsell olive green there and the Southern Railway brown on the wagons. And again, I just want to touch on the freight stock. This is something, again, that is really different to a lot of the railways that you may be familiar with. Mixed trains such as this, where you have both passenger and freight accommodation, were quite a common occurrence on the network from the 1898 right to the line's closure. So you could have a station on your layout where you have a mixed train such as this. The locomotive comes away from the train, shunts the wagons as required, then rejoins the passenger service and takes it away. So some great operation opportunities there. The models themselves are all in the 009 scale. So it's exactly the same scale as 00 gauge, the 176 scale, but they run on track that's half the width. It's exactly the same width track as N gauge. But there are specific pieces with the correct sleeper spacing for 009 with the narrow gauge style. You can get either the set track pieces as you see here, or Peco do a comprehensive range of point work and flexible yard lengths of track. So you can make a full system either with the set track pieces and the streamlined pieces there too. And you can get so much in a small space. This is a 4-foot board that I have in front of me, and we've got a full train here, maybe 4 or 5 coaches on a maximum holiday makers special, but usually in the winter months, a train of 1 or 2 coaches such as this would be sufficient. The Peco tight first radius curves, which all the stock can run around, would be able to fit on a 2-foot board wide such as this. So maybe one of our Hatton's precision boards is an ideal small diorama for you to get started with a model of the Lynton and Barnstaple Railway. So we've got the track. We've got some details about the locos. These have been provided by Heljan for a couple of years now in various different styles, covering the 3 original Manning Wardles, both in the 1898 condition and the later Southern Railway liveries too. We have models of the 1925 built locomotive, Lou, and the replica that's been commissioned by the Festiniog Railway, Lyd, as well. So all 5 of the locomotives, the Manning Wardles, are available. And to complete the set, Heljan are also bringing out the Baldwin too, the 1898 locomotive delivered from America. You can see here in one of its earlier liveries, and they are covering every single livery the locomotive has carried throughout its life. And I don't know about you guys, but I can't think of many, if any, other railways where the entire locomotive stock has been produced in model form. You can have every single engine that worked on the original Lynton and Barnstaple Railway. There are no gaps. You can have all 5 of those locomotives and you have got a complete collection. I really can't think of anything that fills that gap. So if you are a completist or you really want to have the whole set, this has got to be the railway for you. And it is complemented by a lot of the rolling stock as well. Peco have brought out huge amounts of different wagons and vehicles that you can see here. We've got some of the bogie wagons that were brought in the late 1920s, some of the original 4-wheel goods wagons, the closed and open varieties that you see there. These again are made available in the colour schemes appropriate for the time. So the original Lynton and Barnstaple livery when it was a private railway operation, and then into the Southern's more familiar bauxite livery from the 1920s until the closure of the line. The coaches themselves, we can't overlook the coaches. Again, Peco have tooled up many different variations of these. You have observation coaches, full brake coaches, the first and third composite vehicles. So pretty much all of the coaches along the line's collection are available to be seen, and you can get them in model form too. I'll just show you a little bit of a close-up here if I can. I don't think my second camera is working, unfortunately, but I'll just take a bit of a closer look at that. I do have a model here of the second formation. I'll just try and pull that up on the screen for you. In the meantime, I'll just give you a shot of the locomotive, the replica that's running still today there. That's number 762, as you can see it here on the screen. Unfortunately, I'm not able to get that second shot up for you. I do apologise, but I have off-screen just got a setup there of the Southern Railway locomotives in the Maunsell green with an appropriate carriage to go with that too. But you can cover the full history of the railway with the stock that's available. And again, there's even more than that. We've covered the rolling stock, the track. You can actually get some of the buildings too from the reopened station at Woody Bay. These have been produced by Bachmann and they haven't been available for a couple of years now, but you can certainly still see them from time to time on our pre-owned collections. So if you really want to make a full replica of the Lynton and Barnstaple Railway, you can do. You've got the locos, the stock, the track, the buildings. As we mentioned earlier, there's so much here that you just don't get for a lot of even the larger, more well-known railways, really. Having a complete collection of things to get started, it's really, really a good place to start if you are thinking about looking at narrow gauge modelling. The locos, the coaches, the track, the buildings are all really high quality models, having been introduced in the last 5 or 6 years. So everything is a 21st century tooling too. And let's just take a look at some of the photos of the structures on the line as well. We mentioned that it was more like a standard gauge railway in miniature form, and it really was. This is Cheltham Viaduct, and that's not the sort of structure you see on a usual narrow gauge railway. A huge stone-built viaduct that survives until this day, and we may see trains running across it again in the future if and when the current preservationists restore services to this part of the line. But it really is a blending point. It's not really a narrow gauge railway, even though the track is under 2 foot wide. It's got a lot more in common with the mainline railways that were around in the 1890s and have been since. It was one of the only narrow gauge railways in Britain to have full mainline style signalling. You've got coaches that are larger than pretty much any vehicles on narrow gauge railways at the time. You have freight traffic on there too. You have holidaymaker traffic. You have large locomotives, some of which saw import from the United States 100 years before the mass import of US locomotives, such as the Class 66s coming onto British Rail. 100 years earlier, the Lynton and Barnstaple Railway were doing it before everyone else. So do take a bit of a look. I've put a link in the description for everything we have for the Lynton and Barnstaple Railway and 009 modelling too. And there really is a lot. This is just a small selection of what I was able to get on the screen. The coaches themselves come with several different running numbers, as do the wagons. There's further liveries on the Heljan models covering different names and numbers and eras of their lives. The locos start off at around £150 and go up from there. The coaches start at about £30 and the wagons start at about £20 each. So it is possible to get a nice little collection going, maybe a locomotive, a few coaches and some wagons. You've got a complete train here for not quite a lot of money either. And the track, as mentioned, comes in these set packs, or you can buy it in the yard lengths, the yard boxes that you can get. And the point work is available too. If you're already a 00 or an N-gauge modeler, this track works in exactly the same way that you're familiar with the rail joiners at the end and the points being either the Insulfrog or Electrofrog type. But who can resist modelling something like this? It really is a charming, picturesque railway. You can see it there on the side of the Exmoor Hills, a locomotive in the olive green livery hauling some of those magnificently liveried original coaches. Even on a 21st century scene such as that, you've got a lot of train in not a lot of space. You can fit this much into about 2 feet. We've got a 4-foot board here, so this is ideal for either a small diorama or a station piece. You don't need a lot of space to be a 009 modeler, and it's perfect for even a shelf layout or for picking up one of our precision boards and making a small, maybe a small winter project or adding it onto your current layout. So do take a bit of a look. Have a bit of a look at what we have available, because there is so much of it. So you may need a little bit of time to sit down and breathe it all in, really. But I think this is a great place for modelling at the moment. 009 narrow gauge is a really expanding market. The Lynton and Barnstaple has so much available at the moment, but you can run this alongside an increasing number of other models, such as the Festiniog Railway bug box coaches and the forthcoming Small England and Double Fairley locomotives that are on the way too. So this is just the start, really. You can combine an amazing Lynton and Barnstaple Railway collection with any other items you have. So I hope I've inspired you to take a closer look at this fascinating railway system, and do be inspired about getting a model going. We have everything available for you to get started. We have the track, the locos, the rolling stock, a good mix of everything, and we have a lot of information on the railway on our website too. So click that link in the description for more information. You'll find out all you need to know there, as well as the full prices and details of the rolling stock and models that I have here today. Otherwise, I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and our Facebook page for more great videos like this, including real railway profiles, skills casts, and some close-up and personal views on models too. Otherwise, I'll leave you with some of the views of the Lynton and Barnstaple Railway, past and present. If you have any more comments or there's anything you'd like to know, please leave them in the comments section or get in touch with our customer experience team. Otherwise, I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.